I started out as a military photographer with the Australian Army, and then we did a trade detachment with newspapers. I consider myself to be very lucky to be able to, go each day with a camera in my hand and capture photographs that, will hopefully end up in the newspaper. The most recent award I received was the Walkley for the broadcast camera for 2012. And that was for a 3 or 4 minute video piece that I did on a battle that I was involved with Australian soldiers in southern Afghanistan last year. You have to gauge each situation as it happens, and obviously you've got to put your safety paramount. You don't want to risk your life silly for for a photograph. It's more or less with the camera up at your eye when you're photographing in your difficult situations, and there's bullets flying around and things going bang and everything else. I just more or less concentrate on what I'm doing, which is to try and capture the best image that I can at the time, obviously without putting myself at too much risk. It's normally after a major event has happened and you're reviewing the pictures or reviewing the video that you actually weigh it up and think you're actually quite lucky to get through that experience. I've been very lucky with the access with the Australian soldiers and the American soldiers that I have embedded with in Afghanistan. I think it's actually helped me, being a former soldier, with the guys on the ground, that they seem to relax and seem to be very comfortable with me, in their presence, which is great for me because it frees me up to get close to them, to earn their trust, which then obviously gives me better access and better photographs, for people back home to see what it is that those boys are doing out there. That picture was taken in southern Afghanistan with Charlie Company of the 2nd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. They were searching different buildings for weapon caches and IED caches. As they were uncovering things and looking for things, the dust was kicking up, and just with the light catching in the room and catching the soldier, when I was looking through the camera, it was just too good an opportunity not to take the picture. That's young Tucker. He was a young US Marine. That was a very cold morning in Helmand Province. We had to sleep on the ground because it was a very small building. There was about 30 or 40 guys all cramped into this one little space. And to get warm, he'd actually just crawled up behind his dog to get a bit of body warmth from him, while the rest of us were all curled up freezing. So he was not a smart boy. He was a couple of days old, but because he was so dehydrated, he actually looked premature. That was in Pakistan after the earthquake that destroyed a lot of people's homes up in the highlands. And the little baby was brought in by the mother at the time, but unfortunately he was too far gone and died the next day. I was with US Marines down in Helmand Province in 2010, and the guys were looking for one of the insurgents, and he's actually looking through his weapons sight at a man that's a good couple of 100 metres away, just to make sure that he wasn't a threat to the patrol. And that was just inside a building with the light coming in from the left. The buildings, some of the buildings over there are just unbelievable. It's all made out of mud and straw, but fantastic structures. I was with the US dust-off helicopter crews, who are the medical unit that fly into hot landing zones and pick up wounded soldiers and Marines. The enemy are still in the area, and the guys are still fighting and exchanging rounds. And these guys more or less just came running out of the dust with the wounded soldier. You can see both guys are holding his hands to comfort him. He, I think, from memory, been shot through the chest. And they were racing towards the helicopter. We were on the ground for maybe 30 seconds to a minute, and then we were gone again. I'm not very good socially these days. I don't like going out and mixing in pubs and clubs. It's not so much the physical side of it. It is more the emotional side. Like when you're over there and you're seeing this death really every day, you sort of close it all out. I have a bad habit of switching off to concentrate at the task at hand, just so it doesn't affect me. I'd be no good to anyone over there if it was a basket case and I was still trying to take these photographs. He was out west in Sydney with his dad having a play in the park, and he wandered off and went into one of the little waterways in the parks there and drowned. He invited me to the funeral and gave me access to the mosque, and this was just inside the mosque and she was more or less saying farewell to her little boy, and obviously she was quite upset. I mean, it was really sort of quite full on, and a bit of a humbling experience to be given the privilege to be able to photograph something that emotional. Working in the press gallery is actually quite a great challenge for us, because we're always trying to find different pictures and new angles and different ways to photograph the politicians, because we photograph them every day, and that's the challenge that I set myself personally every day, is to try and come up with something new, which doesn't always happen. It is a challenge, but that's part of the joy and excitement of working in the press gallery. It's a funny picture. His hand is actually nowhere near the bull's bottom, believe it or not. It was just the angle that that picture was captured. I was coming back to doing something else. I saw Tony put the camera up to my eye, took a couple of frames, and it wasn't until I actually looked at it that I actually found it to be quite a funny picture. That was the day she was more or less convicted and sentenced. It was a huge media scrum. I was knocked down to the ground by the police and more or less stood on, so I couldn't get up as they dragged her into the jail, and my back was against the police door. So as I was on my back looking up, I had my camera pointing up, taking photos, and as she came out, she ducked down so the cameras wouldn't see her face and more or less looked straight at me. We had suspicions it was going to kick off, so I was there from about 5:30 in the morning. And I was actually there on the very first punch that was thrown. It was a young guy that the crowd just turned on, and it took half a dozen policemen to sort of wail into the crowd to drag him and drag him out. And then from then on, it was on for young and old, and it was just a matter of following the crowd and see who they turned on next. Probably Afghanistan has been the highlight for me as a photographer, because everything's so raw and emotional, and it's you're capturing imagery that defines part of history. We've been involved in that war for over 10 years now, and I consider myself quite lucky and privileged to have to be able to work with some brilliant people who obviously looked after me and saved my life on numerous occasions. Without them, I probably, I know for a fact I wouldn't be here today, but also I wouldn't have some of the wonderful pictures and photographs that I've been able to capture without their help.